Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Hackney Council's Planning Subcommittee meeting. My name is Steve Race, and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. This meeting will be recorded and is being live streamed on YouTube. Councillors taking part in voting this evening are present here in the council chamber. If any councillors are joining the meeting remotely, they do so as an observer, and they will not be able to participate in the discussion and the vote for any planning application on the agenda. I welcome any local residents and any members of the press who are here to participate or to observe this evening's meetings. And for those participating in the meeting remotely via Google Meet, the virtual meeting technology does have a chat function. However, please only use this to raise IT-related issues. As chair of this subcommittee, I will not be monitoring it. In the event of an internet outage, we will adjourn the meeting and then come back and start again. And I'll first introduce the members of the planning subcommittee as follows. We have Councillor Michael Desmond, we have Councillor Ali Sadek, we have Councillor Claire Joseph, we have Councillor John Narcross, and we have our Vice Chair with us this evening, Councillor Jess Webb. Next, I'll introduce the council officers present at this meeting. To my left, I have Growth Team Leader Graham Callum. I also have our Legal Officer Christine Stevenson. We also have in the room Central Area Team Leader Sinead Carr. Online, we have Conservation and Urban Design Officer Luciana Grave. As ever, we have our dedicated ICT Officer Mario Kraman. And then to my right, we have Governance Officer Gareth Sykes, and we have Mark Agnew in the room too. Some of you present in the room would have contacted the Governance Officer in advance of this evening's meeting to register to speak. Objectors to the applications and representatives of the applicant are also present in the room. Before we continue, I just want to briefly outline how this meeting will proceed. We'll hear each planning application in turn, summarised by the planning officer. We'll then hear a 5-minute statement from any objectors, followed by a 5-minute statement from any applicant present. If there's more than one speaker from an applicant or an objector, they'll have to agree amongst themselves beforehand how they will split the 5 minutes speaking time. Members of the planning subcommittee will then be free to ask questions of the planning officer, objectors, or the applicant. It's my role as chair of the planning subcommittee to ensure that members have all the information they need to make a decision, that objectors and applicants have the opportunity to set out their case, and that the meeting runs properly. I will not be taking any contributions from the floor. This is a meeting in public, it's not a public meeting. You must have given notice to the governance officer before the meeting if you want to speak. The deadline for registering to speak was 4 p.m. yesterday, and the speakers list is now closed. Subcommittee members are not representing either their wards or their political parties. The subcommittee will make its decisions on the basis of site visits that they've made, what we've read in the published application report, and of course what we hear this evening. We must make any decision on an application in accordance with the Council's development plan, which includes the Council's local plan LP33 and the London Plan 2021, unless relevant material planning considerations indicate otherwise. Can I also emphasise that subcommittee members should not take into account or discuss non-material planning matters when making a decision. Members should not have allowed themselves to prejudge any application prior to this meeting. Similarly, if a member has any interest relating to an application on the meeting agenda, they must consider whether that interest ought to be disclosed, and where appropriate, they should withdraw from the meeting while the application is discussed and voted upon. When we've finished our deliberations on a planning application on the agenda, we will vote on the recommendation as set out in the published application report. And when the decision is made, that is normally the end of the matter for this committee. The applicant may appeal their decision, and objectors may seek legal redress. I advise you to seek legal advice in either case if that is relevant. And finally, depending on how the meeting progresses this evening, we'll take a short break at 8 p.m. We'll now move to the published meeting agenda, beginning with apologies for absence. I think I have 2 apologies.
Yes, 2 apologies from Councillor Levy and Councillor. I just wanted to make one just correction to your opening statement. Apologies, Chair. The deadline for registering to speak was actually last Friday, not yesterday.
Sunday, yes.
Yeah, because it's based on, normally our planning meetings are on a Wednesday, but obviously today it is on a Monday, so apologies, Chair.
Great, no problem at all. And I'd also like to welcome Councillor Lee Scott to the room as well. Great, so we move on to, we've got 2 apologies for absence, Councillor Levy, Councillor Young. I've got no apologies for lateness. Item 2, declarations of interest from anyone on the committee? No? Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. This item is in my ward, but I think I'm impartial. I haven't been involved in any discussions around the item.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Councillor.
you.
Great. Have we any proposals or questions referred to the subcommittee by the council's monitoring officer? No, thank you very much. Hi there. Great. So we've got two sets of minutes to approve. We've got the minutes from the 11th of January 2023. Has anyone got any comments or any issues on those minutes? No. Can you let me know that you have noted and approved them? Are we noting or approving? I can never remember.
Approved.
Approving. Approved. Great.
Okay,
And then the 1st of February 2023. Any questions? Notes? No? Okay. Are you happy to approve those? Approved. Thank you very much. Great. Thank you. In that case, we move on to the substantive item for this evening, just the one. This is item 5. We have 44A to 44B Well Street, and we're going to be led through this by Sinead, I believe.
Button looking
Top
very
right
right
hand
end of
corner.
the picture.
Got it. Good evening, members. I'm Shoda Carr, the Central Area Team Leader. So the site in question tonight is 44 to 46 Wells Street. This is just the site plan to show you where it is. So it's on the southern side of Wells Street at the junction with Shore Road. So the application, this is just a photograph of the site. The application before us is actually for a variation of an existing planning permission. So the application relates to this 4-story building, which has the commercial uses on the ground floor and residential above. Just to run you through the existing plans. So this is just the elevation along Wells Street. And then the rear, where is the access to the residential flats above. So they all have deck access, and their entrances on Shore Street, which is just here. So planning permission was granted in 2020 for the erection of a roof extension to create 3 self-contained residential units. So this was what was approved, which was a metal-clad roof extension with windows along all elevations to provide the 3 units. So that's the rear elevation. They were just extending the staircase up into the roof level to get the access for the new flats. And in the glass, you can see here, this is the glass surround to the bike store, which is also being changed as part of this application, just to highlight that. So that's the elevation along Shore Street. So you'll see, as approved, the extension terminates at this point, and there was a canopy along the rear. So that's just the CGI of what we've approved on the corner of Wells Street and Shore Road. And that's just the image of the roof extension from above. And then again from above to the rear. And so, as I've mentioned, permission is now being sought to make some amendments to the design of the proposal. It's important to note that when the application was originally submitted, there were a number of concerns raised by both residents and design officers at the council. So we did seek some amendments which were subsequently consulted on. These amendments mainly related to simplifying the window openings on all elevations of the building, removing the glass boxes which were located to the rear elevation of the building, and reducing the height of the roof extension to bring it in line with as approved in the 2020 permission. And then also to set back the extension from the roof extension at number 42. So these are the plans which we are seeking approval for now. So you can see that the openings along the elevations have returned to a flat top, and they are changing from windows to doors, which lead onto terraces, which are located along Wells Street elevation. And at the rear, the difference between the as approved and the proposed is that the number of window openings would remain the same, but the formation is slightly different. And then along Shore Street, the point that I highlighted earlier is where the extension terminated on the approved plan, is that the revised plan does include an extension here along Shore Street, which a number of the objectors have referred to as an infill extension. And this is just a floor plan to show you the units. The number of units would remain the same. This is an extension of the roof And then here you can see the setback. This is the extension number 42, and the one at number 44 would be set back from that. So that's just a roof plan to show that the green roof would be on top of the roof extension. And then we just have a series of CGIs to show you how it compares to well, this is what they're now proposing, sorry. So this is along Wells Street, and then that's the corner of Wells Street and Shaw Road. And then that's along Shaw Road, and you can see Park House on the left there. And then that's just a rear elevation. In terms of the materials, we approved what's on the left here, which is a zinc cladding. And now what they're proposing is another sort of metal cladding, but a slightly different color, more red, which design officers are comfortable with, fits in with the existing building, which is of red brick construction. So that's just to summarize that the approved image at the top is what they have planning permission for, and the one on the bottom is what they're seeking to amend the development to. So planning permission is recommended for approval subject to conditions, and we're also including a section 106 in this application because since the original consent was granted, we've adopted the new plan, which has new policy requirements, which include car-free throughout the borough, and when creating new residential units, there would be a contribution towards carbon offsetting. That's the only 2 points that the section 106 is securing. So permission is recommended for approval subject to conditions and the 106.
Great, thank you very much, Sinead. Excuse me. We now have, speaking in objection, we've got Natalie Sutton, who's the chair of the Classic Mansions Tenants Association, and we also have Councillor Claudia Turbo de Loff, who's councillor for the ward. You've got 5 minutes. No, hang on. You've got, you can speak for 5 minutes on your own, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so we'll, who's going first, basically? Great.
Great.
Perfect.
I'll just ask for the lights to come back, please. Thank you.
Sorry, give me 1 second.
Thank you.
And so are the lights working? Yeah, so the lights are working at the moment, and when it gets to amber, you have a minute left, is that right? And red, you've got 10 seconds. Red on time, red finishes. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Yep, oh, okay. Hello. As you said, my name's Natalie Sutton. I'm the chair of the 1 to 9 Classic Mansions Tenants Association. We've seen the objections submitted by Councillor Root and echo what she has said. In particular, residents are concerned that the history and current state of this proposal is muddled and unclear. There's been a lack of clarity throughout the whole process, which has comprised 6 submissions, all using the shops postcode rather than the different postcode for 1 to 9 Classic Mansions. There have been significantly inaccurate measurements, inconsistencies in plans and statements, and a lack of engagement with residents. Furthermore, the planning officer's report includes conflicting information and inaccuracies. Residents have concerns that material planning considerations have been confused and misrepresented. Firstly, the part of the proposal referred to as the side infill is reintroduced by this variation. This is the part of the plan that extends along the Shaw Road elevation, as you've seen. At section 2.0, relevant history in the planning officer's report, only the design is listed as the reason for the refusal of the previous application, 2019-1994. In fact, this side infill extension is a substantial deviation from the approved plan drawing for the approved plan, and was part of the reason for the refusal of the previous application, due not only to its design, but also its scale and position. The confusion builds when reading the officer's response at 3.5.3, which says the variation shows no increase in massing or bulk compared with the approved scheme. This is to be read alongside the proposal for this variation to extend it to the Shaw Road elevation. Residents are left wondering, how can these 2 statements be reconciled? Or perhaps is there confusion due to the 2 sets of drawings for the approved scheme available on the planning portal? Further confusion has arisen with the publication of the addendum today, which looks to change condition 5 to the approved application. Residents would like to know, is this the correct process for this sort of change? And what's the process for making a variation to a variation? Residents agree with Councillor Root that setbacks for setback's sake are desirable in a conservation area. Refenestration, the proposal cites windows behind the substantial pediment, and this living space will have no view out other than at a brick wall. This is a bad design. People shouldn't be asked to live like this. There will be issues with daylight in and aspect out. They're both seriously compromised to fit in the number of flats in the proposed design. Fewer flats in the design would solve this. In terms of access to planning services team during the process, residents made calls to and left messages for the planning officer on a number of occasions during the consultation period for the approved scheme in February 2020. Their aim was to discuss concerns around comments in the planning statement regarding impact on neighbouring amenity, only considering neighbouring properties and not considering the impact on the occupiers of flats already comprising 1 to 9 classic mansions. Residents have been unable to have a conversation with the planning officer nor with any other member of planning services. Residents are concerned that the BRE impact assessment for daylight and sunlight implications is not included in the approved application. There'll be a loss of light and privacy in habitable rooms with a fleet of 3 flats on the top floor of the existing classic mansions. Residents have wider concerns, which we are aware are not strictly within the remit of planning, however they are relevant. Waste provision is only for the added development with no consideration for neighbourhood amenity. The bins added for the development are in the same location as those for the existing 1 to 9 classic mansions on the footpath immediately beside the entrance gate to all of the flats. This is the site of persistent and ongoing fly tipping. Residents have reported over 100 incidents here since August 2022, an average of 3 per week. There are also regular issues with security and antisocial behaviour here, which will not be improved by the addition of more bins and items on the footpath. National and local government policy on keeping wheelie bins on the footpath is unclear. Other concerns include the entire lack of engagement of residents by the freeholder. There's been no direct communication on these proposals. Residents commissioned a structural survey in 2012, which states that the degradation and structural deterioration of the concrete floor and roof members is of great concern. Further investigation should be attended to as a matter of urgency. The structure of the existing building has problems that get worse all the time. The building has had 4 freeholders in 11 years, and no substantial maintenance of the building has taken place in this time. There are historic and ongoing issues with leaks, deteriorating masonry, and the concrete structure. Residents want to support Hackney in building new homes. Residents welcome a proposal for new homes that meets all the required criteria, is the size and design most needed in the borough, has design and access that maintains light, a sense of space and privacy for the existing flats, and both enhances the lives and existing residents in the area and of the residents of the new homes. We'd like to leave you with these questions. How can members be confident the consultation process has taken place fully when we haven't been able to have a dialogue about our concerns? How can members be confident the approval of this variation proposal when there's a lack of clarity in the proposal and inconsistencies even within the report presented today?
Great, thank you very much. And Councillor Tabedor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Thank you everyone for the opportunity to speak. I'm afraid is to speak against approval of this planning permission. The hope for me today as a local councillor is that the objections presented today and in the past are seriously considered, and that absolutely yes to development of much needed housing, but to consider resubmitting a new application, starting afresh, as an opportunity to take all of the concerns into consideration. My main arguments are as follows. So first is the clearly confusing and inaccurate information provided throughout this process. Second is a serious concern I have over what seems to be historic issues with leaks in the building. Are still present now, leaving me and tenants, understandably, in the building really concerned as to whether the structure of this building is ready for further development of dwellings, and the potential, of course, disastrous and consequences that it can bring in future. The third is the mismanagement of the building, as many have mentioned and have objected already, or have expressed, sorry. My understanding is that in 2012, there were some recommendations made in terms of the serious structural issues that are related to this building, especially to leaks, which I've been able to see myself as well, and that have not been followed through still, and is still in disrepair. So understandably, one wonders how can more dwelling be built on a building that still has existing issues related to leak in the building. Fourth is the significant loss of natural light. The residents living opposite to the proposed staircase, which shows in the drawings, and in the drawings already shows the shade and the shadow will bring those staircases. that it will definitely block natural light for residents. But not only natural light, but it will also take away from the privacy of those homes. Personally, I do worry that this will become also a high traffic area of people going up and down, understandably a staircase, in the absence of a lift in the building, and which undoubtedly will change the entire experience, of course, of those living in the place, missing of decent privacy and natural light, which of course is a very imperative element for good mental health and well-being. So in my view, this area of the staircase definitely needs a new layout or redesign. The fifth is a waste collection, as expressed already. My concern is that added, because there isn't a specific area for waste collection, the existing area for bins does attract antisocial behavior. It does have a smell. It is unpleasant, and it's literally just centimeters away from, the residents' main door, main entrance to their homes. And for me, the last bit, and perhaps what I found most shocking, is the discrepancies in measurements to date. You will see in page 35.533 that the pack that we have today says that it is clearly stated that it was evident that there had been discrepancies with the actual size of the roof. Today's pack information acknowledges that the survey drawings indicated that the roof is 950 millimeters or 95 centimeters narrower than shown in the original plans. But this application also states that it seeks to rectify the plans. But this is not a minor detail, because I feel quite alarmed because this has been in the pack presented as a minor amendment. However, 95 centimeters is a considerable oversight to be had in this application, and one that really worries me a great deal, because 95 centimeters is the size of a single bed, or short of a full or small double bed. So I'm not sure how accurate the drawings of the dwellings and the measurements of those studios and one-bed flat are, considering that there is this discrepancy with this measurement. Therefore, considering for me, this will have huge repercussions in terms of smaller spaces and what it can mean for people living in it. So just to conclude, I fully support the proposals and objections as well made by my colleague, Councillor Root, of using this as an opportunity for the applicant to resubmit a fresh application, taking into account all of the points that have been raised, just not now, but historically, by residents, and of course to engage residents a bit more. This is all I wanted to add. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Councillor. And then supporting the application, we have Vivian Chan, the agent with Studio Verve Architects. You have also up to 10 minutes on the basis that there were 10 minutes on the inside.
Thank you. I hope not to take that long. Dear Chair and members of the Planning Committee, my name is Vivian, and I'm the architect for this application. I just want to set some background just to maybe iron out some confusion. The original approved application reference 2019/3246, which accommodated 2 studios and one bed, was granted back in April 2020 to Trenor No. 2 Limited. So it's a very different people to the people submitting this particular application. Subsequently, our clients, Nicer Estates Limited, acquired the site with planning and came to us when the roof was discovered to be a lot shallower in depth compared to the dimensions shown in the planning approved plans. Basically, they gave me a call and said, Vivian, we can't build this because you said it's 95 centimeter, not quite a bed size, but yes, it's quite a lot. So there's no way we could fit what has been drawn. So we need to iron this out with planning. So we consequently obtained professionally measured survey plans and submitted the application for variation of conditions in November 2020. So very swift turnaround time. We did it within about 5 months or so. The application was validated in January 2021, and the first round of changes was requested by the case officer, Raymond Alcott, in August 2021, which we duly responded very swiftly. The reason why I'm outlining the dates is because we had to make a lot of changes over the course of 2 years and 2 months. So this then translated to quite a lot of confusion as to what was presented on the planning website and the consultations to the neighbors and the wider public. So the changes that was first asked for, I'll just run you through very quickly, is the increased front setback towards Wells Street from 1.5 meter to 1.6. The 1.5 is quite critical because if you look at this entire site elevation on this section of Wells Street, there are 4 other buildings that have very similar roof extensions, and they're all around 1.5 meter from the setback, the front setback. Secondly, he asked for glass additions, which is the glass boxes to remove, and we did that. And we fixed the rear setback at 0.75 meters to match with that of number 42, which we are somewhat attached to. So we share a party wall. And a setback of 1.15 meter where there is a corridor. And you would note that our original scheme has arch windows, which I love deeply, but it wasn't shared by Raymond and his colleagues. So we took that down and we simplified it to very simple rectangular ones. And the height was lowered 50 millimeters below that of number 42. But I guess that wasn't very good enough because much later on, remember this is August 2021, in June 2022, a second round of changes was requested by Matt Payne, the design officer, followed by a site visit in September 2022. The reason the site visit was critical is because they wanted to see the setback that number 42 had. So my colleague Jose went along with Matt for this site survey. So our plans were updated to show the relationship with number 42 as measured on site. That's why it was increased to 160 mil. And the height was consequently lowered to 2.8 meters, which is what the planning approved drawings was. And we updated all the visuals, which is the CGI's views provided in order to show all the revisions that have been agreed with the design officers. Then further changes to annotations and additional diagrams showing the discrepancy of roof plans and so forth were requested, and we submitted that in February 2023 in preparation for the subcommittee meeting, which didn't quite take place. So I just wanted to address a few points to all the, not all, but some of the concerns raised. In the course of this 2 years or so, it was a bit confusing, yes, but the only changes that we made to this approved set back in April 2020 is the roof extension now sits 160 mil behind the neighboring rear roof extension. And we looked at the site elevation, and if you look at the aerial view shown by Sinead, you would see that every one of them, which is number 48 to number 50, number 32 to 40, and number 22 to number 30, Wells Street, they all have their roof extensions like bookends. In other words, they have this side return towards either Tudor Grove or Shaw Road. And this is just the way, the characteristic of this sort of roof extension. So we thought it would be good if this could also echo that. Number 48 to number 50 is directly opposite this particular building. Yes, it is new built, but it has the same character of the return. And if you see the 2 blocks of 32 to 40 and 22 to 30, they are also the classic mansion properties. There is very similar in terms of pediment and the red brick, exactly the same as, not exactly, but in the same character as our number 44. So if I understand that you mentioned about the application that was refused in 2019/1994, but I would like to remind you that that particular scheme, yes, it did have a side return, but it had a very dominant curved corner, which only had a setback of 500 mil from the building edge, and it had 0 setback towards the south. In other words, to the facade facing onto Park House, it has 0 setback. So it was very dominant and bulky. Number 3, in terms of what else we changed besides that is from the agreed, is that we propose for accessible flat roof terraces, which we feel strongly, because this was carried through during COVID, that we can all agree that the value of flat roof terraces is important for the mental and physical well-being of occupants. And these flat roof terraces enjoy a substantial separating distances from the nearest neighbors to the north, east, and south. And if you could see the 4 other properties I've mentioned, they all have the same flat roof terraces that are accessible, including that of number 42, which is an infill development. So fourthly, we have changed the cladding, like from that of the silvery gray standing seam to a rhomboid reddish shingle cladding, which we thought was beautiful and more befitting of this sort of heritage type mansion block. And we feel that it's of a higher quality, and it gives rise to very slimline sight lines for the metal frame windows and doors. And it provides a very nice texture. So in other words, our clients were prepared to spend more money to provide a higher quality roof extension. And the other minor point is that we felt that the glass enclosure to the bike store is not quite appropriate for maintenance and for the longevity of it, because of the nature of going in and out with a bicycle. So we propose what we've always done in most cases, a black stained timber cladding for the bike storage. So we apologize that the drawings are very confusing. In fact, I spent the whole of today trying to reconcile myself between the various planning history, but we believe strongly that the case officer and the design officer have worked very hard with us, including making a trip up to the rooftop with a measuring tape to make sure that we are all on the same page. And that was presented by Sinead just now, I think is very, very clear, despite the historical confusion. The stairs that were pointed out in one of the objections that might have impacted the 3 windows on flat number 8 is not a new thing, because we have not moved this particular stair core at all. It's in an exact location, so it wouldn't have worsened any other impact. I sincerely feel that the points that I've brought forward today might alleviate some of your concerns, and we feel strongly that these changes, though minor in nature, provides for a far higher quality architecture befitting of the area. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, everyone. Comprehensive from everyone involved. Can I, just before we kick off with the committee, can I just come to Sinead first and then to Christine? Sinead, I assume the answer to this is yes, but given the concerns raised by the objectors, are we clear that the amendments to that we're being asked to consider this evening are to the accepted and voted for proposal that has been through already? Yeah, so are we clear that we're working off the original sort of proposal that we should be, basically? Yeah, you should say that into the microphone just so we've got it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and Christine, can I just be clear? The proposal that we're considering this evening is simply a variation of the previous, these 3 variations. So on setback of roof extension, the extension of the roof extension at the back, the materials to the roof extension, the bike store, and the detailing of the fenestration, which I assume is the detailing that we can see in this final lab.
From what I've read within the officer's report, that appears to be the case.
So we're not considering the concept of the extension in reality, like the actual extension. We're just talking about the variations.
Just talking about variations, and Shauna can confirm that. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Great, over to the committee. Questions? Yeah, Councillor Narcross, kick off. Councillor Desmond, then Councillor Joseph.
Yeah, I was just picking up on a point raised by the resident objector about the concerns about the structure of the existing building. I'm just wondering, obviously these are just variations of something else that's already been agreed, but in the light of, there's been a few examples of masonry falling off buildings in the borough in the sort of past month or so. Has a structural assessment of the existing building in relation to these plans been done?
Christine, do we consider structural assessments of buildings? We've had this conversation recently, haven't we? Yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
There hasn't been a structural survey done for the purposes of this application because it's not a requirement for the planning permission. So structural matters are not material planning considerations in respect to something like this.
yeah, so just a reminder that structural considerations are planning control, building control, they're not planning consideration. Okay. Is that everything for now, Councillor Narcos? Yeah, great. Councillor Desmond?
Yeah, firstly, I think I should declare a non-pecuniary interest because my grandparents did live at 2 classic mansions in 1939. I don't think it should affect me, but whenever I go to that very high quality Neo Waitrose store opposite, I do glance at classic mansions. One day I'd like to perhaps pay a sort of sentimental visit there. But I am actually quite sensitive to this because of this historic connection. Would the resident agree that the change in the aesthetic in terms of the red fascia, which looks much more sympathetic to me, does augment and enhance the scheme compared to what was proposed before? Does this make you feel a little bit more sympathetic towards it?
Feel fairly neutral about that, is the answer. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Councillor Desmond. Councillor Joseph?
Thank you very much, Chair. I suppose my question would be to planning officers, just picking up on that point by Councillor Desmond. So the red zinc, I appreciate is perhaps more in context with this particular building, but if you look at all the buildings down the street, which I think we did see in one of the earlier pictures, may have been picture 3. Apologies, I don't have the, but just basically the view of Wells Street, you'll see there are lots of roof extensions and they are all in grey and white. So in terms of the context of Wells Street, I would say that potentially the red is slightly out of context there. So I suppose I just wanted to draw people's attention to that it isn't necessarily part of the line that goes along the street. Also, in terms of the decorative frontage, maybe this is one for the architect. By bringing that massing forward, I suppose the view from the street means that frontage isn't seen very well. Is that something that was considered or?
Let's go with the first question first. So the materials extension.
The design officer, Luciana's on remote. I don't know if she wants to come in and talk about materials.
Yes, I can cover that. So in terms of the quality of the material, we are very sort of confident about the quality. I do see sort of Councillor Joseph's point in terms of some of the extensions in the area sort of a grey or a white, but we think that one, there is enough variety there because there is a mixture of sort of rendered and light grey and darker grey, and then also some sort of like slate roofs and some sort of terracotta sort of tile roof. So we feel that there is enough of a variety that this particular change in material is not going to stand out. And in fact, the sort of the warmer color, the warmer tone, and also the sort of the smaller scale of the shingle detail rather than the sort of vertical zinc cladding, it's probably more sort of in keeping with a residential sort of extension rather than a commercial one. So we think it actually will be particularly good quality material. There's not going to sort of stand out or sort of detract from the area in any sort of negative way. I hope that covers it, but I'm happy to provide more information if necessary.
Thank you, Luciana. Does that answer the question, Councillor Joseph? Or could it respond to your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I suppose, yeah, that's a matter of taste and context, really, isn't it, for each one? Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then Vivian, the answer on the detailing of the fenestration. Now, I might be wrong actually, because fenestration is windows, isn't it? So is it the detailing of the windows or the detailing of the brickwork at the front, which seems to have changed as well?
Yeah, the detailing of the brickwork, detailing of the windows have changed because it used to be arch, and then we're flattening it into just rectangular to echo the rest of the street. But in terms of your concern, if I read you correctly about the pedimented nature of the parapet, the brick parapet, we have not brought it forward whatsoever. It's still at 1.6. Yeah. So maybe it's just maybe the views are taken slightly differently because the top one is the 2020 and sorry, it's the 2020 approved one, and obviously the lower one could have been taken slightly different view. And yeah, yes.
Does that answer your question?
Does it answer?
Is that right?
Two different pictures. You can certainly see this facade a lot better on the top picture than you can on the bottom one. So it's a bit, is it?
So what facade are we talking about? Are we talking about brick
Um,
or the extension itself, or?
No, the original brickwork right at the top.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's a different angle.
So it's got the
Yeah.
semicircle in it, is that what you're talking about?
Yes,
Yeah, and then the
yeah.
circle on the side. So you've added detailing to the brickwork by the looks of it.
No, we haven't touched the brickwork. No.
Can I just,
Maybe it's okay. In that case, then the former CGI basically didn't show brickwork.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
different,
can I just
CGI. So this is
clarify?
go on, yeah.
The CGIs are done by two different
Yeah, two
architecture
different.
firms, and the original ones weren't as detailed. So there isn't actually any work happening to the parapet that as existing, it's staying the same. It's just also on that image at the top, you can't really see very clearly the roof extension like I can see here. Can you turn the lights down a little bit and see if that makes it any different? Because you can see the box, but the actual brickwork on the original building there's no change to that. Yeah, you can just,
So essentially, we've just got a better CGI or a more accurate
Yeah.
CGI in the bottom.
Yeah,
than on the top,
basically, yeah.
Done by someone different. So that's how the building looks. Sorry, Graham, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to provide some comfort that the planning approvals are based on the drawings and not the CGIs. So the CGIs are for information. So there's maybe a change of angles or the details are shown differently, but what's actually approved is what's shown on the numbered planning drawings rather than CGIs.
Other questions from the committee? Yeah. Councillor Sadek?
Thanks, Chair. I've got one question which I think is probably for legal, and then two or three for planning officers. The legal one was just if you could clarify for the purposes of planning law, what's the relevance of the residents' concerns around the existing problems with the building in terms of leaks and what the other point was, mismanagement of the property generally. Is that relevant at all?
You say that one first?
Can you just clarify, your first question, you're referring to with regards to the changes made?
So no, so the objectors have noted some issues with the current building as it stands, including leaks and various other things. So my interpretation would be it's not a planning material concern because it's not to do with the building that we're taking.
No, I have to agree with the chair there, and I will get the planning officer to confirm that it's not really illegal, but it's more on the planning side of things. Does that make sense?
Go on.
It's just on relevance, so it sounds like the answer's the same, whether it's answered by planning or legal. Thank you. A couple of other questions. One was just around the use of the terrace and the change of the windows to doors. If I've understood the report correctly, it's the council's planning officer's position that the terrace wouldn't be, the residents wouldn't go out and use the terrace. Obviously, the doors will facilitate that. And to me, it seems very unlikely in practice.
So, sorry, there has been some confusion about this because I read this. Can you set out clearly what the report does and does not talk about?
so I think the confusion may have come from when you do a variation of condition, you carry over all the original conditions. And one of the original conditions on the 2019 application was that no flat roof area shall be used as a terrace area, because in the original consent, the windows were just windows. They wouldn't have enabled access. On the plans that are now being proposed, they are showing terraces that run along the Wells Street elevation, that they terminate, I can just show you. So the terraces terminate at this point here. So the condition's been amended so that this area here and all this section along here is not used as an outdoor amenity area and shall only be used for access purposes, because if there were terraces on that side of the building, they would have the ability to look into residents in Park House. So that's what the terrace has been amended to in the addendum to make that clear. But in terms of the terraces along the Wales Street elevation, as the architect pointed out, a number of the roof extensions along this stretch of Wales Street have terraces at that upper level. If you can just see there, that's number 42. They've got a terrace. They've got a terrace at 40. And then there's terraces along here. So they are sort of character of the area. And given the distance between this side of Wales Street and the other side, there wouldn't be any amenity concerns. So we're satisfied with that.
That's clear, thank you. And then just the last question. The resident objector made a point that I just wanted to get your view on. Is it correct to say that the design making up the new variation, so the rear extension part, is part of the reason that the planning application was refused in the first place? I know the architect mentioned the dimension setback had changed. Are there any other considerations beyond that that were relevant to this?
I could show you the refuse scheme because I thought it might be useful to have it on hand. So that was what was previously refused. So you can see the extension was a lot further forward, so it was a lot closer to that original parapet along Wells Street and Shore Street, extended right the way up to the rear elevation on Shore Street there. And the window relationship with the elevations below just wouldn't be something that we would support. And then along the rear, it was much more bulky here, and you can see it projects beyond the extension at 42 Wells Street. So we're confident that the current variation does not go to the extent that this did, which was refused, and we wouldn't support this if it were to come in again. And we're confident that what we have now is a suitable amendment to the original permission.
Okay, great. Councillor Joseph? Oh, sorry. Mark, did you want to come in? No, Councillor Joseph, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just 2 quick points, please. The first for officers. I appreciate that we can't comment too much on the application that's been approved. We're not here to decide that's already been approved. However, since it was approved, fire safety regulations obviously become a big issue, sort of post-Grenfell. So what I'm just slightly concerned about is the access arrangements to that extension. So I can see this one staircase that goes past residents' windows really quite closely. Is there any other way of accessing the roof extension? Would there be another staircase?
Graham?
Yeah, thanks. There's been lots and lots of changes post Grenfell and rightly so. But in terms of where that leaves planning, there's stuff on combustible cladding, which it's only on taller buildings anyway, but doesn't apply here anyway. The staircase issue is something that's going through consultation at the moment, and that only relates to the government consultations about buildings which are 30 metres or more in height that require secondary staircase access. So those changes haven't been agreed and don't form part of the planning or building control requirements as yet. The proposal is that they will be a building control requirement, but obviously will be reflected in planning drawings, but that wouldn't relate. So premature to make a decision on that, and it only relates to taller buildings in any event.
Thanks, Councillor Joseph.
I've got another one, but I don't mind waiting. My other one was just to the architect. So I appreciate that obviously the structural issues that residents have told us about and the leaks and so on do not necessarily form material part of this planning application. We can't make our decision based on that. But just in terms of goodwill, do you know if, has your applicant made any attempt to communicate with the leaseholders in the building or to try to negotiate perhaps they may not be obliged to, but it may have been a neighbourly and good management to do so?
Yes, I was not aware of the leaks, so I'm only made aware because of the objections. About structure, I mean, this is just sort of a calculated opinion. You can see along this street, there's 3 classic mansions, and the other 2 have accommodated the roof extension safely, I suppose. So I think that all I can do is I would speak to the client who promises me that he's gonna get started right away to actually give it some weight and thought, and obviously communicate more to all the occupants and stakeholders in this building. Yes.
Thank you. I'm not going to take any further conversation on that because it's not a planning, material planning consideration because it's building, it's not even, I'm not sure, yeah. So, Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. Just a technical point. As far as I understand it, regs used to be that you had to have 2 doors in between your bathroom and a kitchen area, and now you don't have to have 2 doors between your bathroom and a kitchen area. Is that?
Yeah, Graham?
Yeah, I'm not sure on the detail of that because it would have been building regs. There's nothing in planning guidance on that.
Okay, I mean, it's just my biggest, I mean, we have to agree this, it's been agreed, but my concern about this is just the lack of opportunity, that they're not 3 one-bed flats, that studios are a kind of dismal.
Sorry, but we're not really talking about the studios, are we? All the, because we're only talking about the amendments and the variations.
Okay.
So that,
I mean, well, just to let me stick my view in the pot, Chair, I find it really dismal that we've got 2 studios, and I think it's a bad use of space that seems to have used this 2-door thing when, and I'm not an architect, but
then I
think.
suggest you buy the building and you design something yourself, because
Well,
we're talking
it's
about this
not quite-
application as
it's
it is
not
now.
quite built yet. It's
Councillor
just
Webb, have you got a
that.
question?
Why aren't they 3 one-bed flats, Chair?
I don't think it's a question that, I mean, if the officer wants to answer that, but it's not within our gift in this committee to talk about it because it's not part of the application. Well, if you want to contact the architect afterwards, privately, you're more than welcome to do that. And it's already been passed by this committee previously. Any other questions? I've got a few. Councillor Norcross.
So one of the variations is on the windows to the proposed development. So I was just wondering, in light of one of the concerns that the resident raised about sort of light behind the Studio 2, which is kind of faces out onto the sort of the brickwork of the existing building. Does the variation in the windows have any effect on the light and are the light levels satisfactory in Studio 2?
The number of openings is still the same. It's just the formation is different. So previously there were single windows and now they're like a pane of 4 windows. So the light would still be the same. And you can see that's the Studio 2 on that plan there. So it is dual aspect and they do have 3 full height windows facing onto Wells Street. So they would receive a sufficient amount of light.
Just ask about daylight and sunlight. You will have heard that the objectors reference that in terms of not being done. Is that right?
Because there was no increase in like height of the extension in terms of the impact on neighbours, it wasn't considered necessary to ask the applicant to do a daylight and sunlight report once we'd received amendments that we were happy with, because we were content that there wasn't a need for it.
Yeah, Councillor Nichols.
Sorry, so just to clarify, so the new formation of windows is the same sort of square footage or square meterage of window. It's just in a slightly different arrangement. Is that correct?
Yeah, so here you can see the series of 4 panes. So that's the elevation. And just on the plan there, so one of those 4 panes serves the kitchen area and the other one serves their bathroom. And then what we approved originally was 2 sets. So you have they've actually have more now because they had 2 sets of 2 and 1 set of 2.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, I'll just check whether I had anything else. Waste collection, waste disposal, are we content around the space and storage?
There hasn't been any changes to that as part of the original permission because there's no changes to the unit mix. We can't request any changes.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's everything. Go on, Councillor Marcos.
This might be a tricky one, but so just the bike storage, obviously the bike storage, the cladding is changing. Is that the only change to the bike storage, and are we happy with first floor bike storage? This is the first time I've seen that on an application. Is that normal? Is there any, do you have to literally carry the bike up the stairs? Is there a little kind of ramp or anything?
It's not ideal having it at first floor level, but that was what was happening in the original application, so we're limited as to what we can change. There has been a reduction in the cycle parking, so the original permission allowed for 10 spaces, and now they're providing 6. They're actually only required to provide 4 based on the number and mix of units, so they are exceeding their requirement, but it is less than what they originally proposed.
What's the rationale for reducing the bike storage in the new application?
I think it's that it'd be more usable space. I think fitting in 10 into the same space would have been pretty tight.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone? No, okay, thank you very much. In that case, we will move to a vote. So the recommendation summary is to grant planning permission, subject to conditions and completion of a legal agreement. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. Against, please raise your hands. Thank you. And no abstentions. Okay, great. Thank you very much for everyone who came to listen and to participate on that this evening. In that case, we move on to item 6, which is the delegated decisions. We have 3 sets of delegated decisions, including the one that was incorrect from the last meeting that was sent back. So we have delegated decisions from 10th of February to 19th of March, 20th of January to 9th of February, and 21st of December to 19th of January. Do we need to note that? I think if I ask for any comments on any of them, and then we'll note them together. Has anyone got any questions, Councillor Desmond?
Superficially, I was slightly concerned on page 90 about the refusal of a painted sign, because, you know, businesses have had difficult times, and this is a property in Church Street, which is of course a conservation area, and a painted sign might be apt. But then I just looked it up and saw it was Foxton's. So, but I would quite like some information as to what they proposed and why we refused it. Because we obviously want things to be in keeping, but it says painted sign, and I'd have thought that would have possibly been in keeping, but, you know, I'd need further information.
Great. And what's the process if someone has an issue about it substantial and just wants more information? Is it?
Well, I mean, obviously, documents regarding delegated decisions would have to be amended from the planning service.
Yeah, so I suppose the question actually is more, you just want more information about why. So I would I'd probably email Natalie and she can cascade it to the right person. That's great.
Right,
Thank you. Great. Okay. Is everyone else content with those 3 delegated decisions packs? Noted. Great. Thank you very much. And then we have any other business? None was notified. Good. Okay. Item 8 is the next dates of the next planning meeting. So we've got the 3rd of May, which I assume is not bank holiday or anything, given there are lots of those going on. No, Wednesday, all good. And then we move on to the June, July, September.
Obviously, after May, are obviously currently all proposed. So
yes, we will have
you have to bring to your attention.
Great. In that case, thank you very much to the officers. Thank you to Mario as ever. Thank you to the committee members as well. Have a good evening.
Thank you.